Hey everyone, Austin Schneider here. Welcome to Rise Podcast, where we talk about real influence, self-development, and entrepreneurship. What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Rise Podcast. Super excited to have Brennan on the podcast. He is the founder and CEO of Hoopswag. Also, a couple more e-commerce brands. Young guy, super excited to tap into his psyche and hear his journey because it's inspiring. It's going to inspire people to just freaking get after it. So, Brennan, welcome, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
Dude, come on. So, firstly, I want people to hear a little bit about your story, more so with Hoopswag. Maybe kind of give the 3,000 square foot view of how you started and where you guys are at now.
Sure. So yeah, I'm 21 now. I technically started the company when I was 13 years old. And even before that, like growing up, I remember being like 7, 8, like your traditional entrepreneurial stuff, right? I was selling lemonade at a garage sale and I was selling stuff on eBay, kind of figuring out like what that even meant, what e-commerce was. And like I found that concept of selling stuff online so intriguing that like I was 8 years old selling random products that I get at garage sales or Goodwills to someone on the East Coast and shipping it. And I found all of that like genuinely really intriguing. And so I got more into doing all sorts of random things online. I tried selling like stock photography. I would buy Nike shoes and resell them. I would, even before I like started making my own socks, I would like buy Nike socks, bundle them together and sell them at a discount. Like I did all sorts of stuff growing up just because like I genuinely found it really intriguing. And so I was probably 11, 12 growing up. I played all sorts of sports and everything. And so at the time, growing up in Portland, basically anyone you go to school with, and I was in middle school at the time. So anyone you go to school with, their parents basically work at Intel or at Nike. They're two massive headquarters out here. And so these kids start showing up to school with these like $14, they're called Nike Elite socks. They got the little blocks on the back. And I was like, this is silly. I was a very frugal kid. And I was like, who is buying $14 socks for their 9-year-olds to wear, their 11-year-olds, whatever they were? It was ridiculous. But everyone is wearing them. And so the mentality of a 12-year-old is like, okay, if everyone else has it, I have to have it. And so I had to get my own pair. And at the time, they only had like white, black, blue, and red. And playing basketball, I was always the kid that had like the most rainbow colored shoes I could find or the neon shorts, whatever it was, just to like, I'm colorblind. And so I don't know if I thought it looked better or what. I just always had to have neon. So I found this pair of these socks that appeared to be like, I couldn't tell if they were tie-dyed or printed or what. They were just like this rainbow cool looking design on Instagram one day. So I saved up my money for a couple months over the summer, bought a pair of these socks for like 40 or $50. I was 12 years old at this time. And my parents thought I was a little crazy just because like your 12-year-old son spending $50 on a pair of socks. It's ridiculous. And I got this pair of socks in the mail, started wearing them to basketball, to school. And all my friends were like, wow, these are like super cool. Where can I get them? All those sorts of things. They were like, clearly I was like, okay, there's some sort of demand for these. And more than that, I wanted like 30 pairs for myself. And so I was like, okay, so I can either go back to this company and pay them $40 for more socks, or I can do a little bit of research and figure out how to actually make them. Like, how did they get there? Because I know their start product and I know the end product. So it's kind of had to figure out the middle. So that led me into about 6 months or so of research I was on like t-shirt forums, talking to local screen printers, like whatever I could do. And again, I'm 12, I'm in school. It's like a side hobby more than anything. Like I just found it very interesting. And so we figured out how to make them, or what I thought how to make them. I found some local guy who could make like sort of at least proof concept. He had like a printer that was like half the size, so we could at least print like half the sock. So I went to the Nike store, bought these white socks, took them to this guy, he printed them, and they came out good, I thought. So I was like, okay, let's see if I can sell these. Threw them on eBay, sold like 12 pairs in the next week or whatever. I was like, okay, I might be onto something. And then from there, kind of like fleshed out like a business plan, even though it's just like a big Excel spreadsheet of like, okay, here's the base equipment I need to be able to just make these at a minimum. Here's how long it's going to take me to repay this. And all my numbers were honestly based off of eBay. Like, how many do I have to sell on eBay? And so then basically like, and this is probably something more, but like I am very lucky in the parent department because I went to them with this idea and I was like, here's the plan for this. Here's what I want to do. And I got like a $3,000 loan. And I ended up paying it back in like 2 months on the original equipment and everything. But basically I got like my original equipment set up in my garage, started printing these things, selling them on eBay. And in August of 2013, this was like an official company. But didn't really take off for a couple of years. I would say it was more of a hobby. But
Because you were
that's
13.
kind of, yeah, I was 13. I was in middle school. So yeah, that's kind of how it started. And so now, flash forward a bunch, we are doing a lot of customization stuff. So if you ever seen the socks with people's dogs on them or faces, we've done a bunch of things for like gifting cases. And so we've been doing a lot of that. And like last year we did about 2.5 million in
Come
revenue.
on.
So, and we're doing all the manufacturing and everything. So it's just interesting to see how the whole thing progresses. But yeah, it's a totally different ball game than when I started.
Yeah. And this is what you're doing full time. This is like, you're all in, like.
Yeah. So I'm doing this full time, and like we're selling socks mostly, and we're starting to branch into other products as well as doing like fulfillment for other e-commerce stores. And so,
Cool.
yeah.
So, okay, so you're 13. Like, how do you even think to, like, I think about when I was 13, I just wanted to hang out with friends, play baseball, play sports. If I had the coolest socks, I would be like, dude, these are freaking awesome and they're mine. So how do you like think about starting a business when you're 13? Like, is it your parents, or what was kind of your mindset back then, if you even recall?
No, my mindset was more so, it was never start a business. It was legitimately, I don't have $400 to buy 10 pairs of these. How can I get these cheaper? Like the whole, as horrible as it sounds, the whole purpose of me trying to redo all this research and everything was like, yeah, my friends were asking for them and I knew I'm able to make some money off that. But it was more so like, I wanted 100 pairs of these socks in 100 different designs.
Mm,
And I was like, it's probably going to be cheaper for me to figure out how to do that than keep paying this company $40. And so it started more so as like I was literally obsessed with this product more than I want to start a business.
wow. More of, how do I get more of this, get more of the product, so I can rock it, and then also help
Exactly.
people, it sounds like, and see if other people have interest of it.
Totally.
What about your parents? Were they entrepreneurial, or are they entrepreneurial, or?
Definitely entrepreneurial minded. My dad ran like a web data agency for probably 10 years. Kind of me growing up, he worked in like web analytic companies and then broke off and started his own agency. So definitely like I had a lot of that running the household. Like he'd always have business ideas and he tried a couple startups on his own. And my mom came from like an IT background at a big advertising company. And so she wasn't necessarily entrepreneurial, but like I'd argue they're very entrepreneurial minded, whether or not they started huge companies.
Yeah, it wasn't like a blue collar family where
No, I got
necessarily, you're right, like it wasn't
no,
manual labor and construction. Like, it was like there were technology of some sort, and there was something to look
totally.
up to in that area.
Yeah, no, they were definitely very both technologically oriented.
Cool. So now where you guys are now, so how many employees you have? Like, it's probably very seasonal, I assume, from what I remember from an earlier conversation that we talked about. Everything's done, like you have a warehouse, and what's the
Yeah,
picture
so
like now?
sure. So yeah, we've got our own warehouse. We just moved a couple months ago, actually, right before Christmas. I guess that's 6 months ago now. But we
Right.
moved into a bigger warehouse. So we're in about like I think it's about 8,000 square feet right now. And so inside of there, we're doing all the manufacturing, printing, fulfillment, all that sort of stuff. It is still super seasonal, and like this has been my biggest issue for the past 3 years, 4 years. Is during Christmas we have this like literally probably 900% of what we do any other month surge, and it's like how do you scale that? And so a lot of my time in the past year and a half, 2 years has been how can we build software and build processes that are more efficient? Combine that with how can we like have work the rest of the year to kind of offset that and build a lot more like evened out sort of slope, if you will. And
Yeah.
so we did a lot of that by doing fulfillment for other people. Like just that's just a lot of labor shipping like
Yeah.
hundreds of packages every day. So almost more like a 3PL like you would get.
Wow.
So there's that. And then also we've done a lot more, looked at being more of a manufacturing company instead of a direct to consumer company so that we can take on manufacturing deals for larger companies that their line is a lot more equal throughout the year. And so then when
Yeah.
we come in during Christmas with our sort of scale, it doesn't look as big to
Sure.
jump from like 10 to 20 instead of going 10 to 100.
Yeah. Totally. Interesting. And you guys are doing all the printing at the warehouse, it sounds like,
Yeah.
versus delegating it out and send it to someone else, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool. It gives you a little bit more control.
Definitely gives you more control. It's been really interesting to see like this space, especially with like doing customized dog socks. There's been like 10, 15 different companies that have kind of come into the space. And the three that still like exist, including us, all do printing in-house. And it just like, if you outsource your printing and manufacturing, you lose all your margin and you
Yeah.
can't make it.
You're kind of stuck. You're kind of at the neck of the other person, right?
Yeah,
Because
the
you rely
same
on the
issue.
other person.
Totally. And the same problem we run into with like scaling during Christmas, these print on demand companies, because it's like 3 print on demand companies that everyone else uses, they run into the same problems during Christmas. And so it's like your supply is no different than your competitor, and you really have no like leg up.
Sure. Well, I want to hear a little bit more about your journey. So 14 years old, 13, 14 years old, and as you've been able to scale it. So I think the first question is how did you learn how to do that? Like, how did you figure that out? Being so young, like, like there's not a textbook in middle school, junior high that teaches you how to grow a business. Like, what were your processes where like you just had to figure it out yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it was mostly trial and error, I think. Now, trial and error combined with like, I exposed myself to so many different things. Like, so even while I was doing the sock thing, like I was involved with reselling shoes and all sorts of side things just to kind of, I mean, I was 14, so I wanted to keep exploring things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but like you pick up on these little things. So like I started reselling these really expensive shoes, like in the sneakerhead world. And I was like, oh, wait, I can send socks to them. They'll take pictures, send them back. And it was basically like influencer marketing before that was like a term. But it was just kind of like, I was very open to trying new things and trying things that might not be super traditional. And that's still when like a lot of companies were just getting onto social media. Like our Instagram worked really well when there was no like algorithm and stuff for the first 3 or 4 years. And that was just kind of like, okay, this worked. Let's try iterating on this a bit, see what we can keep improving on, and just test and test and test. I mean, and yeah, you pick up some stuff on the internet, you read there's so much information out there. It was like, read some stuff, let's go test it, keep iterating, and just keep your eyes open for stuff that might work and be creative with it.
Yeah, I think that's such a key thing to hit on, just trying. Like that's the same thing how Brain Teacher starts. Like just you try something, solve a problem, try something, solve a problem, try something, solve a problem. It's like it's not gonna be perfect, but you got to try it. You
Yeah,
got to
I
at
mean,
least
that's the only way you figure it
take
out.
the first step. I think people get in the analysis paralysis, or they try to overthink it and they don't start.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's still like at the core how we function today, like how we sell more things and even new business ventures. It's like, do we think it's going to work? I don't know. Like, is it a decent idea? Give it a shot. See what happens.
100%. I bet it's super fun in your business because I'm sure like something could go viral, or I don't know if any of that kind of stuff has happened, or like a product could go viral because you have so much kind of agency of creating really cool stuff that could really take off.
No, are you familiar with the PDX carpet in the airport here?
No, I don't know. I don't think
It
I've
was
ever been in
this,
the airport.
okay, it was this cult-like following for our airport carpet here. So like
Okay.
2017, they ripped the carpet out. There was like riots downtown about this. Like it was
Oh
a
my
big deal.
gosh.
So we made a design that was like the airport carpet on socks, went completely viral overnight. It's ridiculous, but we can do that because we own the whole thing's vertically integrated. We own everything. And so there's
100%.
definitely so many fun creative things you can do with it.
Totally. What were some of like the hurdles that you kind of went through? Because I don't know too much of the like the e-com and just really that space. But I mean, what you're doing is fairly like labor intensive to send out these products, to create them, to print them, and to get them out, and then to scale it to $2.5 million on a product that's what's the average retail?
About $25 on average.
Right. So it's a lot of orders, right? It's
Yeah.
like how were you able to kind of power through that, and what were some of the struggles that you kind of went through?
I mean, it's interesting to see like the struggles because I mean, you obviously have problems at basically any time in a company, right? But like they've changed so much from like when I was 13, 14, I didn't necessarily have as much problem selling things and the marketing was a lot more natural. It was more like, okay, I sold 100 things. I can't make them and do the marketing. Like, so then the first problem was, how do I hire people? And like, I'm 14 at the time. I don't know how to hire people or management or anything. And so like my parents were definitely very big, like mentors in my life, I would say in that regard.
Cool.
But yeah, so like we ran into a lot of struggles with that. We've run into stuff with sourcing. How do you get things out of China? How do you get things even out of the US? Like the negotiations with the manufacturer. How do you find a manufacturer? But like, I think one of the main things that you mentioned was like the labor and scale of selling $2.5 million worth of $25 product. That is a lot of product. And so how do you like the system that we were using to sell $250,000 worth of this product would work fine, but that broke very, very quickly. And so how do you transform that? Like our internal system stuff we use, whatever you want to call it, has changed so many times. And really in the past 6 months, I think we finally got to one that will like scale to more than enough, and that's a different issue at that point. But like dealing with that and like because we're so seasonal, how do you balance labor? And then also there's always the age thing, which I don't know that I've been hit with as hard as some I've heard some other stories of like the age was a big barrier. In some regards, I think it's helped me, and I'm sure they're like you go to school, like that was probably it wasn't even a barrier, but it was just something you had to work with. But yeah, I mean, there's so many different hurdles we run into. It's just a matter of like problem solving, but that's kind of the fun part of it.
Yeah, no doubt. So going to the hiring thing, how did you start hiring people?
Yeah.
So your first hire, you were 14, you said?
I'm 14 or 15. Yeah. I was a freshman in high school. And so the first hire we ever had was like literally one of my mom's friends who wanted some part-time work. Cause she was like, drop her kids off at school. They go home. She didn't really have anything to do. She was like, great, I'll take some, like basically go make socks in my garage was what it was at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how that started. And it's funny because that kind of like led into one thing. Now it's mostly moms, like these part-time moms we employ because they drop their kids off at school. They come make socks for 5-6 hours or shipping, whatever it is in the warehouse. And it's a good flexible gig for them, but that's how we started. Yeah.
How many people do you guys have now?
So we carry around, I'd say 20 part-time throughout the year. Like I said, the scheduling is pretty flexible, but like during Christmas, we used to get upwards of like 150, 200. And I'm actually, that was in 2019 or 2020. The COVID stuff really threw that off because in a warehouse facility, we would like pack people in and you can't do that anymore. Or you couldn't last year. And so that was definitely an issue we faced, but it was actually really good for us because it forced us to be a lot more efficient in our work and actually reduce the number of people that are required by becoming more efficient in system. And so it actually requires less people now to kick out more product.
Yeah. Yeah. So crazy. Interesting journey, man.
Yeah.
One thing that I also want to tap into is, you've been at it for 6 years, I guess, if you would. That's a pretty good like lifespan of a business, to be honest, especially as a young. What do you think has kept you continuing to grow and continuing to be successful with your companies? Because I mean, a lot of companies come up and they fizzle out, especially with e-commerce and like that kind of stuff.
I think one of the largest things is number one, like I've been very for change, like accepting that like, okay, even though we started this way, like we started printing Nike socks. That was our thing. And we were really good at it. We don't even sell Nike socks anymore. Like we don't, because we stopped selling them literally only 6 months ago, but like being able to adapt to what people want and not what you want to sell or what you want to do, but being able to like adapt to what actually people want to pay you for has been one of the biggest things. And also like just watching other competitors come in and out, it's like they're trying to force something to sell that someone might not want. Like you have to listen to what people want. That, and then also like functioning more so as an agency is how I see us now. Like we do customer service externally for other companies because you end up with all these sort of processes. The same reason we're doing fulfillment and manufacturing for other people. It's like we compartment. I can't say that word. We group I always mess it up. Anyways, so we group all these things together, and it's like you end up becoming a lot more profitable when you're able to use the same people. You can give 2 people full-time jobs doing just customer service if you're going to be doing other people's stuff as well, that instead of them being a cost for you, you actually turn it into a profit portion of the business. And so we are an e-com company, yes, but like we function more as an agency that does a lot of things, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I love the for change.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing. It's just being open to it.
For sure. And I think so many people in business specifically, it's like, I think a lot of people go into business and they're like, I'm going to have this idea. It's going to do this. Like you get laser focused on what you want versus like, okay, I'm going to do this and just help people and solve problems and listen to the market and kind of see where it takes me,
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to take that step back though. Sometimes, like I'm sure, like you get so head down into it and you are all in, and then it takes someone else sometimes, which is like, I think a big reason why, like for me, that's been my parents and some other like good friends I have, but it's like, all right, take a step back, look at where you are and where you're headed. And then sometimes you're like, oh, I need to like take a breather for a second, like reevaluate what we're actually doing.
Totally. Yeah, no doubt. the for change, the taking a step back, the hearing people. So your parents. So parents, mentors, like what, like who has really been influential to really help you? Because again, I think when I'm 21, I think when I was 18, I think when I was so young, I was like, I could not imagine like any of this.
No, I'm very fortunate to just have been birthed to the parents that I was, and that's kind of the way it was. And I'm very like glad that that happened, and grateful for that. But yeah, I mean, I think a big part was like growing up, and it's more so hit me the past 2 years. Like I asked them all the time about how they parented me and things they did that I might not have even thought about at the time. Like I said, they're both very technologically sort of oriented, and so I ended up with a computer at like age 7. I was making PowerPoints and in Excel, and learning these things, and
Yeah.
whether or not that translates to a business, I got very good on a computer and understanding all these little parts and pieces and how they fit together. And I think one of the largest things was like, so whenever I would go ask my parents a question about like how to do something on a computer, or even something that I just didn't look up, their answer was generally like, did you Google it? Like, did you look that up? More so made me very, very resourceful, to a point where like I'm very self-sufficient and I'm able to teach myself to learn things really effectively. I think
Yeah.
a lot due to that. And also like they were very encouraging. I know there's a lot of scenarios where parents might not be super encouraging of like entrepreneurship and a non-traditional path. Like I didn't end up going to college, but they're very supportive in that and very like numbers oriented. And they've always been supportive of what I'm doing without like overstepping. And I remember like when I was even 14, 15, they were very worried about like, it was a constant conversation that came up that was like, we want to help you and support you without like stepping on your toes and trying to force you a direction. And that was super important for me because there was this kind of awkward transition to them working full time. We're like, okay, we either need to like kind of split off, go do our own thing, or we're going to work full time on this. But they were very, very careful about like, we want this to be your thing. And if you want us involved, great. If not, we are hands off and we're happy to support you as parents. But we're not trying to like force you into this business thing.
Yeah. Huge. That plays such a big role.
So, and it's interesting. I've got a brother who's 2 years younger than me who isn't necessarily business oriented, but he's very entrepreneurial oriented and like extremely resourceful. He reminds me a lot of like myself, just in a different way.
Yeah. Interesting. No, man, that's key. Key is having that influence, especially so young. Yeah. So what would you, so I'm thinking like you're obviously really young when you started it, but what would you say to someone who is like thinking about starting a business, or maybe they just weren't sure, or like what were some success tips or things that kept you really going to get you to where you are now?
Yeah, I think the biggest one was like learning how you learn as a person, because we all learn differently. Like some people it's reading, some people it's actually writing, it's doing, it's watching a video. I've gotten very good at understanding myself and being self-aware of how I learn, to a point where like it's never, oh God, I can't do that. It's okay, here's what I'm gonna do to go figure out how to do this, or at least figure out who I need to talk to, which kind of plays back into the resourcefulness. But it's never at a point where it's like I can't learn that skill. It's just a matter of how long that's gonna take. And so I end up picking up a whole bunch of different things. Like I picked up photography, how to code, all these different random pieces that actually are really useful. That, and like I kind of mentioned earlier, just being curious about life and things and why things work the way they do. Because when you start just figuring out like why things work the way they do, you're going to start questioning why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? And especially like some of the most random things interest me. Like I was recently talking to this guy about like the way that they're a dentist software company, but it's just super interesting to see how something like that functions and what the crossover is to manufacturing. Cause then you find all these little things that are similar. And then you're like, oh wait, I can improve on this. That. And then also, I mean, it's harder now, I think, than it was when I started, just because like with social media and you see all this flashy stuff and all the Ferraris and the cars and the everything, right? It's like, I can't imagine being 13 and seeing that. I feel like it'd be so easy to get drawn into that. And I'm so glad I didn't have to go through that phase, but like, oh my gosh, I wish I could ignore it and just like focus on what you're doing. And just comparing yourself to others is so difficult, especially in business, because everyone is so like flashy about it. And so it's always nice to meet people who are like just very low key. They do their thing. They're good at what they do. They love what they do. And they actually like care about what they do. So
the Shopify millionaires, buy my course, the flex in, make money on the beach, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. I've always had mixed thoughts on that though, because at the same time, as bad as horrible as I think it is, there is something that I do think to be taken from those, where like you could probably gain an understanding of how business works. Whether
Yeah,
that's the right way to do it, it's probably not, but you learn something from everything. So it's
totally.
always gone back and forth on those.
There's like a way to do it.
Yeah.
And the only tricky thing that frustrates me a little bit is how they rope people into it. And then it's like, okay, like, is it actually a product? Like, is it actually legit? You know, like this 15-year-old who thought he was just going to become a millionaire on Amazon. It's like, now, no, you actually got to put the work in.
If it seems too good to be true, it is. It always
It
is.
probably is. Yeah, I'm sure you get hit up by a lot of those people, huh? Or just like, because you're in that space, like you see it a lot, right?
It's funny. I never even post on Instagram. Like rarely do I post on Instagram, but I get people that hit me up all the time to be affiliates for their courses and all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, I just want nothing to do with this. I'm like, I stick to myself. I answer DMs if people DM me asking questions, like for sure, emails, whatever. But I stick to myself, do my own thing. And I don't have any intention of flexing. I don't know. I don't see the point in wasting time and energy on it.
Yeah, there's not. It's self-fulfilling.
Yeah. Exactly.
Unless like you're actually truly providing value to people. So what would you say like for people who like are like, what mistakes are you seeing a lot of people make, especially like young people? Because I think maybe that's who you could be talking to, is like when going to start businesses or trying to, or is it that they give up, or that they're not curious enough, or not they're not being resourceful, or what kind of sees where you just like, man, if they just did that thing, then.
I think one of the biggest mistakes I see pretty commonly is like trying to sell something because you want to sell it, instead of there's an actual use case for this product and you're providing some sort of unique value proposition to a market. Like your Shopify store didn't work selling the same product as 90 other people because there's 90 other people selling the same product. Or like your thing you're selling isn't special, or just being self-aware enough to take feedback from people too, where like if someone goes, hey, I don't think this is working because XYZ, instead of just denying that right off the bat, at least giving it a chance to understand and pick apart everything you do. Because a lot of the times, and this happens with my stuff still, I go back to things I worked on even a year ago and I'm like, why would I do that way? Like there's a much better way to do that. And like even with our products, we can't sell just plain socks anymore. We had to evolve that into, we're selling customized socks, and we're selling socks with people's faces and text and all sorts of stuff on it. And just finding a way to be different and understanding that it's not easy also. Like this, whether it's e-com, like my world is e-com, right? But any of these other businesses, unless you get lucky, I guess, and you're the perfect place, the perfect time with the perfect product, you're not going to make $1 million overnight. It takes time and effort and learning, and like, don't expect to have it overnight. I think that's one of the bigger things. It's like, you're not going to make $1 million in the next 6 months. Maybe you could. It's just highly, highly unlikely.
Yeah, so true. Not these gurus will tell you otherwise, actually, Brennan. So
I know. I should listen. I should listen.
You should buy their course.
Maybe then I'll make more money.
No, be curious. Like, love that. I read this book, Think Again, by Adam Grant. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but basically he says there's 4 modes of thinking. There's the prosecutor trying to prove you wrong. There's the preacher trying to tell you why I'm right. And then there's the politician who says, you know, yeah, you're right. Actually, you're right. I just want to make you happy. And then there's the scientist who looks at everything like a hypothesis. It's like, we looked at everything like a hypothesis. Like, you definitely think like a scientist. I can tell just kind of how you're operating, where it's like, okay, like this is just a hypothesis. I have no emotional attachment to it. I'm not going to try to prove it wrong. I'm just going to like figure out if this is the right thing, especially in your world, you know, like if I can figure that out, then great.
Totally.
And the patience thing, man, especially in social media world, gosh, if that could just be tattooed somewhere, like, be patient.
Yeah. No, I was thinking about that. I seriously can't imagine being 13, because also at 13, you don't know any better than to look up to these people. Like, I can't blame anyone for wanting to look up to them. If I was 13 and I didn't know any better, I would be on Instagram at the same time, be like, oh my God, I want to be that guy. But it's so funny what you mentioned about like being at the attachment to stuff and the scientists. I grew up, like I had a good chunk of press in like 2017. So then everyone from my hometown, I'm known as the sock kid. And it's just so funny to me because we are doing so much beyond, like I spent most of my time in the past years doing software and manufacturing stuff. And so we're doing like the sock thing is so minimal compared to the grand scheme of our business. It's just so funny because people are like, oh, you're the sock kid. I'm like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
But in the reality, it's like there's so much more going on behind the scenes. But that's the fun stuff. So
Yeah. Would you say like some of your time, because when you were explaining the model with like the warehouse and all that stuff, would you say like fulfillment and like fulfilling orders, like that's even another business that you're
it really is
rolling
like
with?
it's like a separate business really. It's just like, again, no one's gonna, I was thinking about this, no one's gonna go start a fulfillment center. You have to have overhead employees, like warehouse
That
space.
warehouse. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like oh, I'm just gonna go toss one up and
Yeah.
clients. So
Yeah.
it's really separate, but
Yeah. That's super interesting. And then there's the tech that's involved with it.
totally.
Is that something that you're developing?
Yeah, so we developed a lot of, so this is what we spent like the last year and a half doing, was we had to develop this whole system for how do we render, because everything is custom, like dynamic. We feed in images, text, colors, all this dynamic information from all these different storefronts, and it has to be rendered. The images have to be cropped the correct way.
Yeah.
They have to be stored like we have bin locations, because you have to know where your inventory is. So it's this massive system that like really is the actual value in our business. No one will ever know that.
Totally.
Most of our employees don't even know that's where the real value is.
100%.
But yeah, we're more of like a software customization company that happens to be a manufacturing company as well. But yeah, that's where the value of it comes from.
That's neat. So what's the vision for the brands? I mean, obviously you got a few of them. I'm sure there's more than what meets the eye.
No, so there's a lot of things that we can do now, which I'm pretty excited about. So one of them is like, we basically built this, the way I think of it is we built this really like functional, versatile backend that we can build programs and products on top of. So like one of them, for example, is obviously like the dog socks. One of them that I'm really excited about is a fundraising program. So imagine like your typical fundraiser for a school. You go to like a local restaurant, you get 10% back. The margins on their stuff, not very good. And the 10% you get back, not very good. They have to go in store, not great. So we run this program where basically you go through, you upload your logo, and then within like 10 minutes, you get 50 different designs back with your logo mocked up on a whole bunch of different products. You go through, you're like, okay, I want this sock and this mug and whatever, and you choose your products. It launches up a Shopify store for you in like 10 seconds. And then from there, it has like a live counter on there for how much you've raised. And we have 35% of all the revenue back. And so we have these tiny little like elementary schools from wherever that are raising like $1,500, which is like a lot of money for them.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool because like grandma can go buy socks for someone. She's not going to drive 3 hours to go to the restaurant. So that's like one example of them. If you're familiar with like Nike ID stuff where you can do color customization and text, we've been doing a lot of that. And then even for like, we've done this for a bunch of podcasts actually, which is like, they use them for guest gifts. So they'll basically like, you'll do like a custom sort of sock or oven mitt, whatever product you want to do that kind of matches like your cover artwork. And then you'll like dynamically place the guest's face and then like an episode number on there and send them to them. And like the response on those has been super cool. Whether you want to get a hold of someone.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah, there's so many different possibilities. And like, that's what I get excited about is like, there's endless opportunities for this stuff. And then it's like, okay, can we go do like a larger corporate sponsorship? Could we do something with a Cameo where we build a store for them because everything's dynamic? So maybe you have like the talent's face with whoever the uploaded face is. And that's a perfect gag gift. Like there's so many endless opportunities that like, that's my world is like, let's go make some cool products now.
Has social media been able to really like with viral and like creating, like getting really super creative, even with like funny stuff or viral stuff or influencers? Like, I feel like there's just a galore of viral content that you could create.
So here's the thing. There totally is. I've done a horrible job at this. Like I really should have, this is something I'm kind of actively working on now. Is like, I could do so much better with social. Like we haven't touched it that much. And the reality that we can kick out products basically in real time and react to events that are happening like in real time and then layer in the customization piece. There's so many opportunities for that we should have, that we need to be taking advantage of that we just haven't even like scratched the surface on yet.
Yeah. I mean, you're spread thin. And the software thing seems pretty legit too. If that's taking your time. I mean, once you get that dialed in.
It's funny. We wrapped that up like 3 days ago and it's been a year and a half and we finally like wrapped it 3 days ago. I'm so excited. Cause like, even though I helped a lot with like, I mean, I did this whole business in the manufacturing process and everything. And so like the guy I was working with to do this, he's very good at coding, but there's only so much business understanding you can have. And so
100%.
I was so involved with the actual development of it, whether I was helping write code or lines of code here and there, but the actual process and understanding, you can't just hand that to someone and expect them to come back. And so I spent 2-3 hours a day for the past literally 18 months, like helping develop the structure of all of this. And to finally have it done, I'm like, oh my God, my time is freed up. Not to mention, like, I think about it all the time. So like it just works. It's in the background now, and now I can go build cool things.
So what is it that's like keeping you fired up and motivated? Like, cause you're, even by hearing you talk and watching you talk, you're just so like, you get so energized about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think number one, I love the whole system thing. Like I'm obsessed. The fact that I have a warehouse with like inventory and stuff, I think it's the coolest thing ever. I'm obsessed with systems and understanding how things affect other things and how we can cut costs here and there and make things more efficient. But like, I also think this whole customization thing, I know like people are always like, oh, customization is the next big thing or whatever. I feel like we're really on to something that has the ability to blow up, and it's going to take having the right product at the right time. But we've put ourselves in a very, very good position to be at the forefront of that. And so that's super exciting to me. And like being able to scale from 2.5 million to like, how do you get to 10, 20, $30 million? I think the jump from 2.5 to there is going to be a lot. I don't know how to do it, but like, I don't know. It's a game. It's a total game for me. And I'm 100%. Like, how much can we shove through this pipeline of manufacturing that we've built? So that, and like also seeing the fundraising stuff, for example, is actually really cool to see in person, because you never understand what that, like when you're sending 200 pairs of socks to 100 schools, like, yeah, those are numbers on a piece of paper, but then you go see a school and you're like, oh my God, this is actually really cool to see this in person. So there's a lot of cool stuff.
And you didn't go to college? Like that wasn't...
I didn't go to school.
Were you checked out in high school? Or you're just like, I just want to get into this. I just want to do this.
I wasn't checked out, but I definitely like manipulated the system for my advantage here. Like I was ahead in math. And so like in middle school, they let me do online classes. And I basically got through a year of high school in like 3 weeks, because the online classes were a joke. And so they shut the system down after I went through it, actually. But I did that, and I played soccer a bunch. So I was like, I did have to go to school. But no, I mean, I graduated early. So after the first semester, my senior year, I graduated and I started working on this stuff, but I got good grades. I didn't take hard classes though. I was good at math, and I knew my advantages, and I could have done so well in school if I wanted to, but I just didn't care was the problem. And so I was like,
and you had something else going on, and you had a vision, and you wanted to.
And part of that was like a conversation with my parents where like they wanted me to do academically well, but we were like, okay, academically, your grades are great. Sure. Whatever. But actual learning, you're probably going to pick up more by learning, by doing this business stuff than you are from a school. And so that was kind of the agreement we came to.
Yeah. Super cool. I'm sure they're really proud of you.
No, and it's cool to have them work with me too. So, and my brother works with us now too. So it's a totally like cool dynamic.
Come on. How is it being the CEO of your family?
It's good. See, I technically have title CEO, but it's definitely more of a, it's more of a partnership thing, I would say, where like we all bring very unique talents to the table. Like the funniest part about all this, my mom, dude, she'll fix like, she's like one of the only people on the West Coast that can fix our printers. Like their own techs don't know how to fix it. She fixes air compressors, builds pretty much anything. It's she's a magical woman. It's crazy.
A title is just a title.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't even know what their title is.
It pulls no weight. Trust me.
Exactly. You do what you do.
It's an ego stroke.
100%.
Cool, man. Well, so vision is to definitely continue to grow with the software. It sounds like, and the customization, and just have a good foundation to blow that up. I'm stoked for you, man.
No, I'm excited. Like I get up every day excited to work on stuff. So that's kind of the goal for me. If I've got that, I'm good to go.
Yeah. What would you say? So any departing marks, like what would you say to someone who is driven, is thinking about getting into business, wants to get into the entrepreneur life, or maybe is an entrepreneur, and maybe they just need to keep going? What would you say to those people?
I mean, I think one big thing that you realize is after you've been through it a bit is like you go through these waves of up and down, and up is really good and down is not so great, but you're always moving. As long as you can kind of keep moving in some direction, things will swing your way. And so like just one day at a time, like I know for my stuff, like there's times of the year where it's really tough to like every day you're like, this sucks. and slowly you work up your slope, and then you're like, okay, this is why I do it. Like, this is really, really good. And so just keep working through that stuff, surround yourself with good people, and things will happen for you.
Key persistence, who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
It's gold, man. What else do you want to add before we sign off here? I want to make sure that we get as much life from you as possible.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think we hit a lot of them. Like, always be thinking about, or always be discovering things. Like, that's the other thing I find myself doing. Even now, it'll be 2 a.m. I'm on some rabbit hole on YouTube. And then like, that's how I got into photography. It was like, oh, I like cameras. These are cool. And then figured it out and kind of just taught myself. But like, go on YouTube, go down the rabbit holes. Like, also the mentality of like, especially social, is like grind. Not really a giant fan of that. Like, I do think that some of my best work comes when like I'm actually focused on something, or like having a generally balanced lifestyle and taking care of your health, I think is like
totally
so important. Like, exercise, sleep, eat healthy. It makes a big difference on your mental health. So I don't know. I see a lot of friends, but
you wouldn't drive a Lamborghini with an empty tank.
No, exactly.
I was that guy though, for sure. Like, I'm sure you have been throughout your journey where it's like, I'm not going to sleep, I'm not going to eat, I'm not going to talk to these people, I'm not going to text these people back. And then you just lose it.
No, totally. I mean, you go through phases for sure, right? You're like, there's definitely times, there's a time and a place that like my Christmas, it's 18 hours a day.
Oh gosh, yeah, I'm
like
sure.
For sure. But January, chill out and like take care of yourself. But yeah, no, there's a time and a place for everything.
Yeah. Well, how can we best support you? These listeners best support you. How can I best support you?
Totally. So yeah, I mean, check out our websites, which are hoopswag.com and then petparty.co. And then I also, like I mentioned, the podcast stuff, we're starting to take on people for that. If you ever want to do like custom socks or gifts for a podcast or a business, whatever it is, that stuff's been super cool to work on. And yeah, if anyone ever has questions or anything, feel free to shoot me an email, Brennan Arganoff74@gmail.com. I get back to everyone. So yeah.
Love it.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll put everything in the show notes. I'm going to
Sweet.
order some stuff right now, actually, from you.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching and listening to the Rise podcast. Please do me a favor and subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already. Share it with a friend if you think it was valuable, and also give it a thumbs up. If you want more content, feel free to follow me on Instagram at Austin Schneider, where I'll be dropping snippets of this and other type of content. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel and be on the lookout for weekly podcast episodes just like this one. Thanks, everyone.